Have the appropriate tools ready. Place the computer flat on the table with the screws facing up. Make sure the display hinge is away from you, no cables are connected, and the power is off. Remove 4 pentalobe screws. The front and rear pentalobe screws look alike but have 2 different shoulder lengths, so keep them separated. Notice the locations of the 4 internal snaps. Use a suction cup to disengage them. Avoid pressing on the areas that have already been disengaged. Insert the flat end of 2 black sticks in the vent area to simultaneously pry open the space between the bottom case and the top case. Then, wearing cut-resistant gloves, work carefully to loosen opposite corners one at a time to prevent the bottom case from scratching the top case. Lift the bottom case from the front about 10 millimeters. Then pull the bottom case off and set it aside. If installing a new bottom case, copy the serial number from the original case to the inside of the new case using a fine-tip permanent marker. Then go to the reassembly instructions. If removing the bottom case to access another repair, go to the next step. Attach the protective battery cover. Use a Torx T3 screwdriver to remove the 2 screws from the battery connector cowling. Then, reposition the cowling and reinstall the 2 screws using a T3 bit in a blue torque driver. Listen for the click that tells you the screws are tightened to specification. Remove the battery cover. When attaching the bottom case, the 4 retaining slots need to slide in place with the 4 screws, shown here at the speakers. Reposition the computer so the display hinge faces you. To prevent top case scratches, hold the farther end of the bottom case about 10 millimeters above the trackpad. Wearing gloves, slide the bottom case to align one of the corners near the display clutch. While sliding the bottom case, be sure to press the retaining slot area at the hinge. With the screw hole aligned, loosely install the first long shoulder pentalobe screw. Then slide the other rear corner of the bottom case into place while pressing the retaining slot area. Align the screw hole. Then loosely install the second long shoulder pentalobe screw. Press the edges of the bottom case at the 4 internal clips. Loosely install the remaining pentalobe screws, making sure that the 2 with the shorter shoulder are at the front. Then hand tighten all 4 screws. Refer to the service guide to run the appropriate diagnostics. Have the appropriate tools ready. The heatsink is for one-time use, so when it's removed for any reason, replace it with a new one. To prepare for this procedure, the bottom case has been removed, the protective battery cover is attached, and the battery flex cable is disconnected. Let's start by removing 18 identical Torx T3 screws from 8 cowlings. Remove the 6 3IP screws. Then use a Torx T5 screwdriver to remove the 2 T5 screws. Leaving the trackpad cowling in place, use tweezers to remove the other 7 cowlings. Although you might be tempted to start disconnecting connectors, hold off on that. Most of them can stay connected. Use tweezers or a black stick to disconnect the antenna on the left. Then use your fingers to disconnect the trackpad flex cable. Using a long strip of Kapton tape, loop the trackpad flex cable and anchor it to the edge of the top case. This keeps the trackpad flex cable protected as you continue heatsink replacement. To prevent thermal gel contact with your skin, eyes, and clothing, now is a good time to put on nitrile gloves and safety glasses. Starting at the left, use a black stick to carefully lift the heatsink. It will be loose until you reach the trackpad connector. As you approach the middle of the heatsink, change your hand position to the edges. Then continue to evenly lift the top and bottom edges of the heatsink. Remove the heatsink from the far end of the logic board. Next, let's clean the chip on the logic board to remove any remaining thermal gel. Start with a fresh IPA wipe. If it is dripping wet, blot it with a paper towel. Then use the damp IPA wipe to clean the chip. Use additional IPA wipes and a black stick to thoroughly remove the thermal gel from the chip and any nearby components. Now align the thermal gel stencil on top and secure it with 2 3IP screws in opposite corners. Apply a dab of thermal gel in each square of the stencil. Now let's use the end of the access card to spread the thermal gel. Gently flatten the card and move it downward. Then, with the same end of the card, spread the thermal gel upward. Check that all squares are filled. Spreading the thermal gel with too much force could cause uneven coverage. If necessary, start over. Without touching the logic board circuitry, hold the stencil in place as you carefully remove the 2 3IP screws. Use your fingers on the left to hold the stencil anchored. Then remove the stencil with tweezers from the right without disturbing the thermal gel pattern. Verify that the squares are uniform, like this. Align the right end of the heatsink over the logic board and start engaging the clips. Stop at the battery connector. At the trackpad connector, press the middle of the heatsink to engage the clips underneath. Use tweezers and the antenna tool to align the antenna cable and reconnect it. Loosely install 4 new 3IP screws from the heatsink kit in the order shown. Then, following that same order, use the torque driver set to 11.5 Newton-centimeters and fully install them. Gently press the center chip area to adhere it. Engage the rest of the clips. Now use the same torque driver set to 11.5 Newton-centimeters to reinstall the 2 3IP screws. Then use the adjustable torque driver set to 10 Newton-centimeters with the T5 bit to install the 2 stiffener screws. Remove the Kapton tape and connect the trackpad cable. Then reinstall the two T3 screws. Finally, position the rest of the cowlings and use the blue torque driver with a T3 bit to reinstall the 16 identical T3 screws. Refer to the service guide to complete the reassembly steps and appropriate diagnosis. Have the appropriate tools ready. To prepare for this procedure, we removed the bottom case, attached the protective battery cover, disconnected the battery flex cable, removed the right speaker with antenna, and removed the heatsink. With the computer on its side, press the Touch ID button a few times to sense its movement. You'll compare this sensation when adjusting the movement of the replacement Touch ID button. Now, with the computer on the mat, remove one Torx T3 screw and use ESD-safe tweezers to remove the cowling. Use a black stick to disconnect the flex connector. Then gently peel the flex cable. To release the dome, use the adjustable torque driver with the Torx Plus 2IP 44mm half-moon bit to loosen the single set screw one turn. Remove 6 T3 screws. Use tweezers to remove the flexure. Open the display and place the computer on its side. Carefully route the Touch ID cable through the top case. With the computer open and on its side, position the keyboard facing you. Set two Y-shaped alignment tools in the Touch ID opening and situate the tabs in the corner edge. Secure the tools with Kapton tape. If you're installing a replacement Touch ID board, remove the two liners now. Route the Touch ID flex cable through the bottom slot in the top case. Close the computer and lay it flat. Place the flexure in the top case. Starting with the corners, loosely reinstall the 4 T3 screws in the order shown. The screw tightening sequence is specific, so let's step through that. First, hand tighten the screw at the lower left corner. Next, use the blue torque driver to tighten the second screw at the upper right corner. Then return to the first screw and tighten it using the same torque driver. Finally, fully reinstall the third and fourth screws with the same torque driver. That's all the corner screws. Now reinstall the 2 inner screws hand tight. Open the computer and place it on its side with the keyboard facing you. Remove the Y-shaped alignment tools and Kapton tape. Hold the adjustable driver with the 2IP bit to adjust the center set screw while using your other hand to sense and adjust the best feel for the Touch ID button. Close the computer and lay it flat. Reconnect the flex cable, adhere it, and place the cowling. Lastly, use the blue torque driver to reinstall the single T3 screw. As a final check, visually inspect the 4 sides of the Touch ID button within the top case. It should be centered with no sides touching. Refer to the service guide to complete reassembly. Have the appropriate tools ready. To prepare for this procedure, we removed the bottom case, attached the protective battery cover, disconnected the battery flex cable, and removed the heatsink. Let's get started by using a black stick to disconnect 9 flex cables. Then use tweezers or a black stick to disconnect the remaining antenna cable. Next, use a Torx T5 screwdriver to remove 5 logic board screws. Lift the bottom edge of the logic board and tilt it up. If necessary, use a black stick to move the cables out of the way. Handle the logic board by its edges to remove it from the top case. Insert the top edge of the logic board into the top case and under the cables. Slide the logic board into place so the screw holes align. Check that all 11 cables are above the board, not caught under it. Loosely reinstall the 5 T5 screws in the order shown. Set the adjustable torque driver to 10 Newton centimeters for the first screw and tighten it. For the last 4 screws, set the torque driver to 14.5 Newton centimeters and tighten them. Connect the 9 flex cables. Finally, use tweezers or a black stick and the flat end of the antenna tool to reconnect the antenna cable on the right. Refer to the service guide to complete reassembly. Have the appropriate tools ready. To prepare for this procedure, we removed the bottom case, attached the protective battery cover, disconnected the battery flex cable, removed the heatsink, and removed the logic board. Keep the trackpad flex cable taped to the outer edge of the top case to protect it during battery replacement. This prevents any flex cable strain or creases. But for this procedure, we first need to remove the battery cover. Then retape the trackpad flex cable to the top case. With the battery cover removed, use caution working with tools near the battery cells. Now, at the top corners of the battery, use an adjustable torque driver with a Torx Plus 4IP 25mm bit to remove 2 screws. Then, change the bit to a Torx Plus 3IP 25mm bit to remove 2 screws at the trackpad. Next, let's pull the battery adhesive strips. There are 8 visible adhesive tabs. The 4 strips are U-shaped and joined at the center. Using tweezers, grasp the first 2 tabs. Then brace the computer to the mat and use your other hand to begin pulling steadily at a low angle to the top case. When the adhesive strips come loose, move to the next 2 tabs and repeat the process until all strips are removed. If a strip breaks prematurely and the end is visible, grab it with the tweezers and continue pulling. Avoid pressing on the battery cells when bracing the computer. Push the battery up a bit to insert a black stick between the battery and the top case. Then remove the battery. Check the top case for residual adhesive. If present, use an IPA wipe to clean the area. Next, switching to an ethanol wipe, let's gently dampen the residual battery flex adhesive. Use light pressure and a black stick on the graphite layer as you gently peel the adhesive. Peel it just enough to grasp it with a tweezer and remove the adhesive completely. Now we're ready to apply the U-shaped adhesive strips. Fold the red liner tab 90 degrees. Remove the adhesive liner from the battery strips. Place the red liner in the top case so the top edge and outer corner align with the top case. Then repeat these steps for the liner on the other side. Press the U-shaped strips. Remove the red liner. Repeat on the other side. Next, install the two 2mm guide pins. Use the guide pins to position the battery. Remove the Kapton tape and extend the trackpad flex cable. Open the display and place the top case in the battery support frame. Install the battery press plate on the battery support frame. Place the computer onto the base of the display press. Lower the lever and press the battery for 30 seconds. Release the lever and remove the computer. Lift the battery press plate, remove the computer, and close the display. Press the 8 tabs to secure them to the top case. Remove the 2 guide pins. Then use a torque driver set to 16 Newton-centimeters to reinstall the 2 4IP screws at the top corners. Lastly, use the same torque setting to reinstall the 2 3IP screws at the trackpad. Refer to the service guide to complete the repair and run appropriate diagnostics.